The sun rises over the Beka Valley, spilling light across the ruins of Baalbek. The air hums with stillness. You stand before a wall of stone. Not bricks, not blocks, but monoliths so vast they seem to mock the scale of human effort. Each one stretches longer than a city bus, carved with edges sharp enough to catch the dawn, resting in perfect alignment as if placed by invisible hands. 800 tons of limestone, balanced, leveled, immovable, eternal. You try to imagine the moment they were set in place. No cranes, no steel cables, no diesel engines growling beneath the weight. Just human hands, human minds, and an ambition so immense it seems almost impossible. The scale is more than visual. It's existential. These stones do not just stand. They confront. They ask, how? Engineers measure. Historians theorize. Yet no one can quite explain how a civilization 2,000 years ago, without modern machinery, achieved what our own might hesitate to attempt. The Triloton of Baalbek isn't merely architecture. It's a message carved in silence, daring us to admit how little we understand. Perhaps they used methods we've forgotten. Perhaps they possessed tools that crumbled before the centuries could record them. Or perhaps, more unsettling still, our ancestors knew something about matter, weight, and motion that we no longer grasp. The stones become mirrors, reflecting not just the past, but the boundaries of our imagination. As the camera of thought pans wider, the ruins transform. They're no longer ancient relics, they're questions made solid. Were these monuments simply temples to gods, or testimonies to a deeper human capacity now lost to time? Every groove, every seam, every impossible fit between stones seems to whisper the same challenge. Reconsider what you think you know. In the stillness of Baalbek, logic collides with awe. You feel the tension between certainty and mystery, between what history teaches and what evidence refuses to explain. The mind wants blueprints, equations, answers. The heart, however, senses something more profound. A story about human determination that transcends calculation. And so, the investigation begins, not of stone, but of understanding, because to look at Baalbek is to look into the face of an ancient riddle, one that refuses to erode. As dust drifts across its monumental walls, a realization takes hold. This isn't just about how the ancients built. It's about what they believed was possible. Across every ancient civilization, from the deserts of Canaan to the frostbitten plains of Scandinavia, echoes a single, haunting refrain. Stories of giants. They emerge from the mists of myth and scripture, half forgotten, half feared, beings of immense stature and impossible power, straddling the line between legend and history. To some, they were gods. To others, monsters. Yet their presence is strangely universal. Why did so many distant cultures, separated by oceans and centuries, speak of the same colossal race? In the Hebrew scriptures, the Nephilim stride across the pre-flood world, mighty men of old, men of renown, born of divine union and human frailty. In Greece, the Titans rise in rebellion against Olympus, their downfall shaping the age of mortals. The Norse spoke of the Jotun, primal forces of nature locked in eternal struggle with the gods. And in Mesoamerica, the Aztec Quinametzin were said to have built the world before humanity's time, only to be swept away by divine wrath. The names differ, the languages shift, but the essence remains unchanged. Beings of staggering size and strength, always standing at the edge of human memory. Skeptics dismiss these tales as archetypes, symbolic exaggerations born from our need to mythologize the unknown. Yet scattered across the globe, The earth offers quiet contradictions, massive stone hammers that no human hand could wield, doorways soaring far above human height in ancient fortresses, burial mounds that, when unearthed, reveal bones allegedly belonging to people twice the average stature of their age. Many of these findings have been lost, destroyed, or discredited. Some are hoaxes. Others, however, remain unresolved. Archaeologists caution restraint. Historians demand proof, and rightly so. Yet amid the rubble of myth and skepticism lies an enduring unease. What if these stories persist, not because they are fantasy, but because they preserve memory? Myths, after all, are not lies. They are containers, vessels for truths too vast or too ancient to record in mere prose. Perhaps the giants of legend are not fictions, but echoes of a reality blurred by time. Consider Baalbek's monoliths, the stones that defy machinery. Consider the cyclopean walls of Mycenae, the massive terraces of Sacsayhuaman in Peru, or the forgotten platforms of Tiahuanaco. Across continents, we find works of engineering that seem to demand more than ordinary human capability. Could the legends of giants be poetic recollections of those who once shaped the world with hands larger and stronger than our own? But even strength has limits. Lifting an 800-ton block requires more than muscle. It requires understanding, precision, harmony between physics and purpose. If giants existed, what knowledge accompanied their power? Did they harness forces we no longer perceive? Or did humanity itself once stand closer to that boundary between myth and miracle before forgetting what it once knew? The fog of history conceals as much as it reveals. Myths whisper of lost ages, bones hint at forgotten forms, and ruins stand as testaments to something greater than chance. As we peer into the ancient record, one question begins to crystallize, more haunting than any legend. If these giants were real, if their hands once shaped the very stones we marvel at today, what other secrets of their craft have slipped through the cracks of time, waiting for us to rediscover? The stones of Baalbek do not ask for belief. They demand explanation. Beneath the ruins of the Temple of Jupiter lie blocks so vast that numbers begin to lose their meaning. One in particular, the so-called Stone of the Pregnant Woman, weighs over 200 tons, more than 3 fully loaded Boeing 747s, and rests 20 feet above ground level. To look upon it is to confront a mathematical impossibility, carved and placed by a civilization whose tools, as far as we know, were little more than copper chisels and wooden rollers. Yet there it stands, unmoved, unbroken, and perfectly aligned with the rest of the temple platform. Now consider Stonehenge. The largest of its sarsen stones weigh up to 80 tons, each one dragged from quarries more than 150 miles away. No roads, no cranes, no iron, just determination, physics, and a kind of endurance we can scarcely imagine. Even today, when engineers attempt to replicate the feat using only tools and materials available to Neolithic builders, the task takes months and the results are never perfect. The stones of Salisbury Plain do not merely defy time, they defy our understanding of human limits. And then there is Egypt, the eternal yardstick of architectural mystery, the Great Pyramid. 200-ton granite blocks were transported from quarries in Aswan, 500 miles to the south, and fitted into place with tolerances so fine that a sheet of paper cannot slide between them. Even with laser cutting, computer modeling, and hydraulic machinery, modern engineers struggle to replicate such precision at that scale. The question echoes again and again. How did they do it? To make the problem tangible, let's shift the frame to our own age. In 1586, Pope Sixtus V ordered the relocation of an ancient Egyptian obelisk to St. Peter's Square in Rome, a single column weighing 340 tons. It took over 900 men, 140 horses, and 4 months of planning. Wooden scaffolds towered over the square, reinforced with ropes thick as a man's arm. The tension was so extreme that the Pope threatened death to anyone who spoke during the lift. And yet the ancients had moved far heavier stones, not once but repeatedly, without fanfare, without record, and often without even leaving behind the tools they used. Each of these ancient feats combines 4 impossible challenges: quarrying, transport, lifting, and placement. Without dynamite, they had to extract stone with copper tools softer than the rock itself. Without wheels, often in rugged terrain, they had to move weights that would crush any sled or log beneath them. Without pulleys or cranes, they had to raise hundreds of tons into precise alignment. And then, as if mocking our confusion, they placed these stones with astronomical precision, aligning them to solstices, stars, and cardinal directions with mathematical accuracy that presupposes a deep understanding of celestial mechanics. The emotional burden of that realization is heavy. Imagine the sweat, the calluses, the thousands of synchronized breaths as ropes tightened and the earth trembled under each impossible ascent. These were not random acts of labor. They were symphonies of engineering, guided by minds that knew exactly what they were doing. The human cost must have been immense, yet so was the vision. And so we arrive at the paradox that defines the megalithic world. The structures are real, measurable, and undeniable. Their stones can be touched, weighed, photographed, scanned. Yet their construction remains a mystery that slips through our grasp like sand. Modern tools can explain parts of the process, but not the whole. We can describe how difficult it would be. We cannot describe how it was done. That contradiction lingers like a challenge carved into stone. These monuments stand as proof that the impossible was, somehow, made real. And until we understand the minds and methods behind them, every explanation will feel like a shadow cast by something greater, an echo of knowledge still waiting to be rediscovered. The story of the megaliths does not begin in temples or pyramids. It begins in the quarries, where humanity first waged its silent war against stone. Here, in the pits and escarpments of Egypt, Lebanon, and Peru, we find the raw evidence of ambition carved into the earth itself. Half-cut blocks remain frozen mid-separation, ancient tool marks running across their faces like signatures from another age. These scars are time capsules, proof that the ancients were not merely dreamers of stone, but engineers confronting forces far greater than themselves. The simplest explanation begins with the copper chisel. Archaeologists point to remnants found at sites like Aswan, suggesting that ancient workers used copper alloyed with arsenic to harden it slightly beyond the metal-etch's natural softness. With sheer repetition, thousands of blows, hours upon hours, they traced fault lines into the granite. Then came the wooden wedges, driven into the grooves and soaked with water. As the wood expanded, pressure built until the rock yielded with a slow, deep crack, like thunder muffled underground. It was patient work, methodical, exhausting, and precise. Yet when we test these methods today, the results often fall short. Copper dulls quickly against hard granite, wedges split or fail to produce clean fractures, and the precision of ancient cuts remains unmatched. The question lingers, were we missing something? Or did ancient quarrymen possess knowledge that transformed the crude into the extraordinary. Some scholars suggest that these techniques varied regionally, that no single method explains every quarry. In softer limestone, copper tools and abrasion could suffice. But in granite or basalt, the evidence becomes more ambiguous. Tool marks found at certain sites reveal parallel grooves so finely cut they seem mechanical, as though something akin to a saw or high-speed drill once touched the stone. Yet no such tools have ever been recovered from the archaeological record. Then there are the outliers, the theories that skirt the boundary between science and myth. Ancient texts from Egypt, Mesopotamia, and India speak of words of power, of tones and chants that could move or soften stone. To modern ears, such phrases sound poetic. But what if they were descriptions of a lost technology, a form of acoustic manipulation? Sound, after all, can resonate materials to the point of fracture. Laboratory experiments today show that certain frequencies can dislodge molecular bonds, turning solid matter fragile under vibration. Could ancient builders have stumbled upon a natural resonance, an early understanding of what we now call sonic physics? Others point to the possibility of chemical innovation. At sites in Peru and Egypt, some archaeologists have observed evidence suggesting that stone surfaces were softened, molded, or reconstituted. Theories propose that ancient masons may have used a form of geopolymer chemistry, a primitive alchemy capable of temporarily liquefying stone. Though speculative, microscopic analysis of certain blocks shows anomalies inconsistent with standard carving, hinting that these people may have understood reactions between minerals and plant-based compounds far beyond what conventional history attributes to them. But perhaps the greatest insight is not in the tools or the chemistry. It's in the mindset. The ancients were not limited by a single solution. They adapted, experimented, and mastered the unique personality of each stone. What we see in their quarries is not just labor. It's dialogue, a conversation between humanity and geology, between will and resistance. Each culture, from Egypt to the Andes, developed methods that reflected its landscape and its philosophy. The builders of Baalbek, the artisans of Giza, the stonemasons of Sacsayhuaman, all faced the same riddle, yet each found a different answer. And so, the first impossibility begins to make sense, not because it is solved, but because we glimpse the range of genius that approached it. Quarrying was the prelude, the foundation upon which all later mysteries rest. Yet even here, in the dust and the hammer's echo, the deeper question remains. Once the stone was freed, cut loose from the earth's grasp, how was it moved, raised, and set into perfect harmony with others of its kind? The quarry gives us origins, but not conclusions. For every block removed, another mystery takes shape, waiting beyond the walls of stone. Imagine standing in the desert heat, the air shimmering above the limestone plain. Before you lies a single block of stone, 100 tons of unyielding mass, freshly cut from the quarry wall. Its destination, the rising pyramid on the horizon. Its path, 10 miles of sand and stone, blistering wind, and the limits of human endurance. The question looms as large as the stone itself. How did they move it? The most accepted answer begins simply, with sledges and sand. Egyptian tomb paintings depict long wooden sledges drawn by dozens of men, their ropes straining as others pour water on the path ahead. For centuries, this image was seen as symbolic, until modern experiments revealed the physics behind it. When sand is moistened to the right degree, just enough to bind grains without turning to mud, its friction decreases by nearly half. A block that might have required hundreds to pull could, with the right balance of water and teamwork, slide across the desert like a ship on calm seas. Yet even this elegant trick explains only part of the story. The largest stones used in the Great Pyramid, some weighing up to 200 tons, would have crushed any standard sledge. The logistics boggle the mind, paths reinforced, gradients leveled, timing orchestrated to the rhythm of hundreds moving as one. The feat seems less like construction and more like choreography, a dance between humanity and gravity itself. Experimental archaeologists have tested other possibilities. Some suggest the ancients mastered the art of counterweight and leverage, walking massive stones forward through a system of rhythmic tilts. Using pivoting beams and fulcrums, they could shift weight from edge to edge, rocking the block in a slow, deliberate cadence. With enough synchronization, a team could advance a multi-ton stone several meters per hour. Slow, yes, but possible. The principle of balance, not brute force, might have been the true key. Then come the theories that push beyond the boundaries of conventional explanation. At Baalbek, where the stones dwarf even those of Egypt, some researchers propose a waterlock system, a form of ancient hydroengineering. By flooding quarries and transport routes, the builders could use buoyancy to offset much of the stone's weight, floating them short distances or easing them across mud platforms. In a region where Roman engineers later perfected aqueducts and siphons, the idea that earlier cultures understood the physics of water pressure is not so far-fetched. The physical evidence of transport remains scattered, but compelling. In Egypt, remnants of raised causeways, some straight as arrows, others gently sloping, suggest deliberate planning for movement on a monumental scale. Along these routes, archaeologists have found traces of crushed stone and compacted earth, hardened by repeated dragging. In other lands, the clues take stranger forms. The perfectly round stone spheres of Costa Rica, still a mystery today. Some theorists speculate they might have served as giant ball bearings beneath heavy loads, allowing multidirectional motion where cylindrical rollers would fail. Others propose hybrid systems, sledges mounted atop spherical stones, offering both stability and maneuverability. It's conjecture, but ingenious in its simplicity. Yet technology alone cannot account for the miracle of movement. Beneath the mechanics lies something more profound, the human story. Picture the workers, lines of men straining in unison, bare feet sinking into the sand, the air alive with chants, timed to each pull. Overseers mark the rhythm with drums, priests offer blessings to the gods of stone and sky. What we might call labor, they would have called devotion. Each block's journey was not just physical but spiritual, a pilgrimage in motion, knowledge passed from father to son, from master to apprentice, songs encoded technique, timing, and belief. To modern ears, they might sound like hymns, but to the ancients, they were equations sung aloud, harmonies of purpose that kept the rhythm precise and the morale unbroken. The movement of stone became an act of identity, binding generations through shared mastery of the impossible. And so, the mystery deepens. The science reveals fragments, the physics of friction, the geometry of leverage, the power of organization, but never the full picture. Somewhere between effort and inspiration, between ritual and reason, the ancients discovered how to make the immovable move. The block reaches its destination, sliding into place with a whisper of finality, and as it settles, the desert itself seems to sigh. A monument not just to strength, but to the unyielding human will to turn burden into legacy. In the silence of unfinished monuments, The clues to an ancient struggle linger. At Baalbek, great stones lie half-freed, their lifting bosses still jutting like handles never used. At Giza, remnants of ramps, crumbled, half-buried, trace faint lines against the desert slope. Each fragment whispers of a challenge that once consumed entire civilizations, not how to move stone, but how to lift it toward the heavens. Gravity, the oldest enemy of builders, has no mercy. A single mistake, one rope frayed, one lever misplaced, and tons of limestone could crush the workers beneath. Yet somehow, these ancients defied it, raising blocks so enormous and aligning them with such perfection that even our laser instruments hesitate to find the seams. How did they do it? The most grounded answer begins with the ramp. Archaeologists propose a system of massive earthen causeways, built alongside or spiraling around the pyramids, allowing stones to be dragged upward. But the math resists simplicity. External ramps high enough to reach the summit of the Great Pyramid would have required more material than the pyramid itself. As such, the idea of an internal ramp has gained prominence. Concealed corridors looping within the pyramid's body, providing a hidden highway for elevation. French architect Jean-Pierre Houdin's model, supported by 3D scans, suggests such an internal spiral could have allowed workers to lift stones efficiently, protected from the desert winds. If true, the ramp was not a mountain beside the monument. It was part of the monument itself. Others look beyond ramps to the power of leverage. The Egyptians, familiar with the shaduf, a counterweighted lever used for lifting water, may have scaled the same principle to lift blocks. Imagine long timber beams, weighted on one end, pivoting like giant seesaws, each pull inching a stone upward, combined with inclined planes. Such counterweights could transform vertical motion into controlled ascension. Recent discoveries hint that the ancients may have understood mechanical advantage far better than we once believed. Carved reliefs depict ropes, pulleys, and compound winches, technologies long thought to belong to later eras. By combining pulleys in sequence, a small team could multiply their strength exponentially, lifting weights once thought insurmountable. It's a concept every modern engineer recognizes, a simple machine hiding genius behind its elegance. Then there are the theories that brush the edges of mystery. In the remote Himalayas, Tibetan traditions speak of monks who raised stones through sound. Accounts from travelers in the 19th century describe horns, drums, and chants, synchronized to resonance with the rock itself. To the Western mind, it sounds like myth, but modern physics has caught a glimpse of plausibility. Acoustic levitation can, under laboratory conditions, suspend small objects using precisely tuned sound waves. The concept of resonance, vibration matching an object's natural frequency, can reduce its apparent weight, even shatter glass. Could ancient engineers, through experimentation, have found frequencies capable of manipulating heavier matter? If so, it would represent a convergence of physics and spirituality unlike anything in our recorded history. More conventional, yet no less astonishing, is the evidence of early cranes. In Greek and Roman ruins, Lewis bolt holes mark the stones, narrow triangular sockets, where metal clamps once gripped to lift and position blocks with surprising precision. Such holes suggest not only cranes but sophisticated lifting tackle, systems of ropes, pulleys, and beams engineered for balance. Though dated to later antiquity, these designs could easily trace their lineage to knowledge inherited from older, forgotten traditions. But perhaps the greatest marvel is not in how the stones were lifted, but how they were placed. In temples and pyramids across the ancient world, the fit between blocks is so perfect that even a modern razor blade cannot slip between them. Measurements taken at Giza and Machu Picchu reveal tolerances of fractions of a millimeter, precision that implies more than brute strength. It reveals an understanding of weight distribution, center of gravity, and mechanical stability that rivals our own. In these feats, we glimpse not superstition, but mastery, a science expressed in stone, encoded in action, and carried out on a scale that humbled the earth itself. Whether through ramps, pulleys, counterweights, or methods now lost, the ancients did not merely lift stone. They lifted civilization, inch by impossible inch, toward the sky. Behind every monument of impossible scale stands an invisible mind, a planner, a dreamer, an architect, who saw form where others saw only stone. For centuries we've marveled at the monuments themselves, but rarely do we pause to ask, who conceived them? Who calculated their angles, their alignments, their harmony with the heavens? These were not random labors of brute force. They were the works of master builders, visionaries whose intellects bridged art, science, and the sacred. In Egypt, they called their centers of learning Perank, the house of life. Within these sanctuaries, scribes and architects studied geometry, astronomy, and engineering as expressions of divine order. Every line, drawn in sand, carried spiritual weight. Every angle mirrored cosmic truth. The same principles that guided the stars guided the layout of temples and tombs. For these builders, mathematics was not mere calculation. It was theology rendered in measure and form. Evidence suggests that these institutions functioned as early engineering schools. Students learned to calculate the slopes of pyramids using simple tools, plumb lines, cubit rods, sighting devices. But the underlying principles reveal astonishing sophistication. They understood proportional harmony, the interplay between vertical and horizontal force, the balance between structure and spirit. The golden ratio, phi, manifests throughout their architecture. In the proportions of the Great Pyramid, the temples of Luxor, even the design of sarcophagi. This ratio, found in seashells, sunflowers, and galaxies, seems to whisper that the ancients saw their monuments as living expressions of natural law. In Mesopotamia, the master builders belonged to guilds bound by oath and secrecy. These early brotherhoods preserved knowledge through ritual, apprenticeship, and lineage, transmitting not just techniques, but philosophies. Centuries later, echoes of these ancient guilds would resurface in the legends of Freemasonry, a tradition tracing its spiritual ancestry to those first keepers of sacred geometry. Beneath their symbols of square and compass lies a memory of something older, a belief that creation itself is a geometrical act, that to build is to participate in the order of the cosmos. And then there were the individuals whose brilliance transcended time. Imhotep, the polymath who designed the step pyramid at Saqqara, stands as the first architect known by name. Physician, astronomer, and priest, he embodied the unity of disciplines that ancient thought never divided. His work transformed burial mounds into geometric marvels, inaugurating the Pyramid Age. So profound was his influence that later generations deified him, making him the god of wisdom and healing. From the sands of Egypt, the narrative extends to Jerusalem, where legend speaks of Hiram Abif, the master craftsman of Solomon's temple. Though his story lies shrouded in allegory, he represents the archetype of the initiated builder, one who holds knowledge both technical and sacred, guarded even unto death. Far older still are the anonymous geniuses of Göbekli Tepe, who, over 11,000 years ago, carved stone circles aligned with celestial cycles, erecting the world's first known monumental architecture, 6 millennia before Stonehenge. These were not primitive peoples groping toward discovery. They were intentional innovators. Their works suggest institutions of knowledge, ancient think tanks, where astronomers, masons, and priests collaborated. Ideas were refined, preserved, perhaps even hidden when empires fell. Some traditions hint that fragments of this wisdom survived within mystery schools, carried in symbols, myths, and initiation rites that concealed technical mastery behind spiritual metaphor. To study these builders is to recognize that humanity's intellectual history is not a straight line of progress, but a cycle of revelation and forgetting. Each great civilization rose on the shoulders of its learned few, those who combined observation with imagination, faith with mathematics. They did not build only for the living. They built for eternity, encoding knowledge in stone, so that even when words and empires perished, their understanding would endure. Their legacy is still with us, whispering through the geometry of every enduring structure, that true architecture is not just construction. It is communion between human reason and the order of the universe itself. For centuries, we have searched for the secret of how the ancients built the impossible. We have debated ramps and pulleys, levitation and lost machines. But perhaps the greater revelation is this. We've been asking the wrong question. The mystery was never about which single technique they used. It was about how many and how seamlessly they combined them into a system of integrated genius that bridged physics, chemistry, biology, psychology, and even ritual. The ancients did not compartmentalize knowledge as we do today. To them, stone was alive, mathematics was sacred, and construction was a divine act. Their builders operated with a holistic intelligence that united science and spirit. Every stroke of the chisel, every poured mixture, every alignment of stars above the foundation. Each was a note in an orchestrated symphony of knowledge. Modern discoveries are beginning to confirm what ancient legends long whispered. In 2006, a team of material scientists found that certain blocks of the Great Pyramid were not carved from solid limestone, but cast, synthetic stone created through a geopolymer process. The Egyptians, it appears, had mastered a primitive form of concrete. They understood chemistry on a level we only recently rediscovered, mixing natron, limestone sludge, and clay to reconstitute rock at will. If true, this changes everything. Some of the immovable stones may have been poured and hardened in place, transmuting the very substance of the earth to suit their will. The revelation doesn't end there. Archaeological studies have uncovered evidence that workers used wet sand mixed with bacterial biofilms to lubricate sledges, reducing friction by as much as 90%. In essence, they were using biology as engineering, living systems harnessed to move the inanimate. The same principle underlies modern biotribology, the science of friction and motion in biological contexts. The ancients didn't need engines. They cultivated living lubricants. Then come the whispers of the extraordinary, the stone-softening legends of South America. In the Peruvian Andes, local traditions speak of priests who knew how to make rock flow like clay. Recent experiments have shown that certain plant-based compounds can indeed dissolve silicate bonds in stone, rendering it malleable before rehardening. Was this the hidden alchemy of the megalith builders? Imagine blocks softened and shaped with botanical chemistry, carried not by brute force but by knowledge of molecular transformation. We stand, then, before a startling picture. The ancients may have used everything: chemical casting for fine work, biological lubricants for transport, mechanical leverage for lifting, and astronomical alignment for precision. What we see as miracles of construction were, in truth, the results of integrated, interdisciplinary genius. But such mastery required more than technology. It required organization on a scale almost unimaginable. Consider the Great Pyramid, over 2 million blocks, each quarried, transported, placed, and aligned within a generation. That is not mere labor. It is logistics. Archaeologists have unearthed papyri from Wadi al-Jarf, revealing detailed accounts of work crews, supply routes, and delivery schedules. These were not chaotic masses of slaves, but coordinated teams, specialized units managed through what could be called the world's first project management systems. The ancients used encoded administrative records to balance food supply, manpower, and seasonal cycles, a proto-algorithmic method of sustaining effort across decades. Behind the physical feats was something greater, a psychological and social architecture. Workers believed they were participating in divine creation. Rituals synchronized human emotion, aligning collective will with cosmic purpose. In this unity of purpose lay their true power, the transformation of thousands of individuals into one sentient organism of creation. And so we arrive at the revelation. The real giants of the ancient world were not towering beings from myth. They were us, humanity itself, when united under shared vision and knowledge, becomes a superorganism capable of reshaping nature. The pyramids, the temples, the megaliths, they are not merely remnants of lost civilizations. They are mirrors reflecting what humanity can achieve when intellect, spirit, and cooperation converge. Each stone bears silent witness to a truth our modern world has forgotten. Progress is not the triumph of one mind, but the harmony of many. The ancients built their monuments not only to honor the gods, but to remind us that the divine spark lies in our collective genius, the ability to integrate, to innovate, to imagine, and to build together. Their greatest secret was not how they lifted the stones. It was how they lifted each other. The dust of millennia has settled over the ruins of the ancients, but their works still whisper, quietly, insistently, through the corridors of time. The megaliths, pyramids, and cyclopean walls stand not merely as relics, but as echoes in eternity, reminders that human genius is both fragile and immortal. Each stone bears testimony to civilizations that once reached breathtaking heights of technology and organization, only to vanish so completely that their greatest achievements now seem like miracles or magic. What we face is a humbling paradox. Our ancestors accomplished feats we still struggle to explain, yet their knowledge, once common, once practical, was lost. Roman engineers created concrete that heals itself with water and outlasts our best modern formulations. Blacksmiths in the Near East forged Damascus steel, a metallurgical wonder whose secrets disappeared with the last of its masters. Byzantine chemists developed Greek fire, a substance so potent it could burn upon the sea, and yet its formula has vanished into legend. These were not primitive people fumbling in the dark. They were masters of disciplines we no longer understand. Human progress, it seems, is not a straight ascent, but a rhythm, a rise and fall, a cycle of illumination and forgetting. Civilizations accumulate knowledge like sediment, layer upon layer, until the weight becomes too great. Then collapse comes, through war, famine, arrogance, or simple entropy, and with it the libraries burn, the teachers die, and the memory fades. What was once science becomes superstition. What was once skill becomes myth. The ancient builders knew things we may never rediscover, and that should shake our certainty that we are the pinnacle of human advancement. The question, then, is not only what knowledge they possessed, but what knowledge we are losing now. As traditional crafts disappear, as indigenous wisdom is dismissed, as digital archives replace living memory, what fragments of understanding are slipping through our fingers? The world changes so quickly that expertise vanishes faster than it can be passed on. Corporate knowledge dies with retiring engineers. Agricultural wisdom fades as monocultures replace diversity. We are surrounded by tools that no one fully knows how to repair, and technologies whose origins we barely comprehend. The story of the ancients may be our own, played again on a faster loop. Perhaps that is why the megaliths still haunt us. They are not just stone, they are mirrors, reflecting what humanity can be at its best, coordinated, inspired, united in purpose. They remind us that the line between imamtevbun and poadvanced is not defined by our tools, but by how we use them. To dismiss the ancients as ignorant is to misunderstand ourselves. Primitive is not a condition of technology. It is a failure of imagination. Solving these mysteries, then, is not about indulging curiosity. It is about restoring continuity. By understanding what was once possible, we reclaim the full arc of human potential. Each rediscovery reconnects us with the creative fire that has always burned within our species. The stones of Baalbek, the pyramids of Giza, the temples of Tiwanaku, these are not monuments to gods, but to us. They are proof that knowledge can be as fleeting as it is powerful, and that wisdom must be guarded as fiercely as any treasure. In their silence, the megaliths offer a warning and a promise. What has been achieved can be achieved again, but only if we remember that progress is not permanent, and that forgetting is as human as invention. The ancients built to last forever. In their endurance we hear their message still, an echo in eternity, calling us to listen, to learn, and to remember. You stand once more before the colossal stones, but now the sight carries a weight of understanding that did not exist before. The massive blocks, once incomprehensible in their size and precision, are no longer simply impossible. They are living testaments to the ingenuity of human thought, the endurance of effort, and the extraordinary power of collective endeavor. Every seam, every groove, every alignment is a whisper from the past, a message that the impossible is often only a puzzle waiting for the right mind to decode it. And yet even now the mysteries persist. There are gaps in knowledge, traces of techniques that leave us guessing, fragments of ancient wisdom that refuse to be fully explained. The exact formulas for stone casting, the precise methods for frictionless transport, the ritualized knowledge that orchestrated thousands of laborers, these remain just out of reach. But this is not a failure. It is an invitation. These monuments are speaking to us across millennia, challenging every generation to approach with curiosity, humility, and imagination. The stones ask us not only to observe, but to participate, to test hypotheses, propose new theories, and carry forward the torch of inquiry they have passed down through the ages. The greatest revelation is not in any one method we uncover. It is in recognizing that humans, even in eras we often underestimate, were capable of feats that blend intellect, will, and organization on a scale that rivals our own. These builders possessed vision, discipline, and confidence, the kind that allowed civilizations to undertake projects spanning lifetimes. It was a mindset that treated challenges not as obstacles, but as invitations to ingenuity, a belief in the collective potential of knowledge aligned toward a singular purpose. Perhaps, then, the real secret of the ancients was not just in their technical mastery, but in their approach to human endeavor itself. They understood that systems, communities, and purpose, when united, can create outcomes that surpass the sum of individual effort. They left behind more than stone. They left us a philosophy of possibility, a reminder that human achievement is limited only by imagination and collaboration. And that is the call we inherit today. Each of us, as observers, thinkers, and dreamers, can join in this ongoing investigation. Share your ideas, explore unconventional approaches, challenge assumptions, and participate in the conversation across cultures and disciplines. Our understanding of the past grows not in isolation, but through dialogue, experimentation, and shared curiosity. Subscribe, engage, and explore with us as we continue to illuminate the hidden chapters of human history. Each revelation about the ancients is also a mirror reflecting what we might achieve in the present and future. The stones endure, but so does the opportunity they present to wonder, to question, and to imagine. After all, the monuments were built to last through eternity. The invitation they extend is timeless as well. To stand before them is to stand before human potential itself, a reminder that every great achievement begins with curiosity, and that wonder is, and always has been, the beginning of all wisdom.